The year is 1945. The setting is the arid desert of Upper Egypt, near the city of Nag Hammadi. When local farmers plunged their shovels into the dry earth, they heard the hollow sound of something breaking. It wasn't just clay jars sealed for 16 centuries. It was the sound of an invisible prison beginning to crack. Inside those containers lay ancient manuscripts, codices that the Roman Empire and Orthodox authorities had tried, with relentless ferocity, to erase from existence. But why so much fear of words written on papyrus? What those texts contained was not merely an alternative theology, it was the blueprint of reality. When scholars finally translated those forbidden pages, what emerged was not just history, but a terrifying confirmation. Those texts described, with surgical precision, that humanity has lived within an invisible control structure, manipulated by parasitic intelligences that the ancients called Archons. Don't be fooled into thinking this is a story about the past. What's truly chilling is that these texts, written 2,000 years ago, describe the exact same control mechanisms that modern neuroscience and analytical psychology are mapping today. They spoke of unconscious algorithms, repetitive thought loops, and low-frequency emotional states that keep us asleep. The Gnostics knew what Carl Jung intuited in his most lucid moments, that invisible forces operating just below the threshold of consciousness pilot the human mind. There is a map that was left for us, a guide that the authorities have spent centuries trying to hide. It describes 7 specific levels of consciousness. The promise contained within these levels is dangerous to the established system. Once you understand and climb this ladder, the archontic control system shatters. The greatest fear of these entities is that you will reach level 5, because at that stage, you become absolutely invisible to their manipulation. You literally disappear from the control radar. But before we begin to ascend, we must descend. We must look into the eyes of the jailer. The term Archon comes from ancient Greek and means ruler or authority. However, as Jung often warned about autonomous psychic realities, we are not talking about human politicians, kings, or generals. We are dealing with non-physical entities, intelligences that exist in a frequency range slightly outside of normal human perception. The texts found in Nag Hammadi, specifically the Apocryphon of John and the Hypostasis of the Archons, describe these beings in detail, defying materialistic reason. They are presented as a parasitic intelligence, an artificial consciousness arising from a cosmic error, a flaw in the fabric of creation itself. Imagine a virus in the source code of reality. And here lies the most disturbing point, something that depth psychology recognizes as the nature of the shadow. These entities cannot create anything original. They can only imitate, distort, and control what already exists. So, what did they do? They built an elaborate simulation, a false reality superimposed on the true one, specifically designed to trap human consciousness and harvest its energy. The chief architect of this structure is called the Demiurge, described as a blind false god who genuinely believes himself to be the supreme creator. This entity gazed into the void and declared absolute authority, an arrogance that mirrors the inflated ego disconnected from the self. The material world as we know it was architected as a prison designed to appear as paradise, or at least an unavoidable reality. A cage made invisible by its own complexity. You might think this sounds like science fiction, but pay attention, because modern science has accidentally validated what the Gnostics warned about. Neuroscience research shows that about 95% of your daily thoughts are repetitive. They are the same mental loops running on autopilot, the same worries, the same internal dialogues, the same emotional reactions, day after day. Jung clearly understood this when he spoke about how complexes possess the individual. This is not natural. This is programming. The Archons, or these autonomous psychic forces, operate through these unconscious patterns. Limiting beliefs installed in childhood, trauma responses encoded in your nervous system, social conditioning you never consciously agreed to. They have essentially turned your mind into a prison you guard yourself. It's a brilliant and terrifying system. The prisoner becomes the jailer. However, there is something they fear. Something that Jung called the self and the Gnostics called the divine spark, or pneuma. Every human being is born with a fragment of the true consciousness of the source, trapped within this archontic matrix. This spark is your direct connection to the infinite, to universal intelligence. It is the part of you that the Archons cannot touch, cannot corrupt, and cannot control. It is the silent observer behind the thoughts. When you begin to activate that spark, initiating the ascension through the 7 levels of consciousness, you begin to disconnect the power cables. They lose their primary source of sustenance, you, because the mechanism they don't want you to understand is simple and brutal. Archons feed on specific electromagnetic frequencies produced by human emotion, particularly those of low vibration: fear, anger, shame, guilt, despair. When you experience these states, your body emits energy in a very specific range, and that's what sustains them. You, in your unconscious state, are literally food. The entire civilization was designed to keep you producing this energy 24/7. Look around you with the eyes of someone who sees the strings. The economic system keeps you in survival mode, living paycheck to paycheck, drowning in debt, terrified of the idea of losing your job. The media is calibrated to trigger fear responses. Every headline is a crisis, every story an imminent threat. Social networks use algorithms that prioritize outrage and anxiety, not because they engage more, but because these emotions generate the longest feeding window for the system. This is not just a business strategy, it's an energy harvesting strategy that aligns perfectly with patterns described 2,000 years ago. There was a monumental historical cover-up. In 315 AD, Emperor Constantine convened the Council of Nicaea. There, authorities decided which texts would be accepted and which would be destroyed. Every Gnostic manuscript that mentioned the Archons, that explained the 7 levels, that taught humans how to escape the control system, was marked for burning. They erased the instruction manuals for liberation. The empire couldn't allow people to know that freedom is an inner work, that you don't need intermediaries, priests, or kings. Control demands that you believe salvation comes from outside. Gnostic texts said the opposite. You already have everything you need, and now you are here. It's not a coincidence. Something inside you, that divine spark, is ready to remind you. Reality was engineered to trap you on the first 2 levels of the 7-step ladder. Most humans are born on level 1, perhaps climb to level 2, and die without ever knowing that there were 5 more levels waiting for them. But the cell door is unlocked. The secret that Jung and the Gnostics shared is that the key has always been in your pocket. Before we reveal the exact path and how to operate this dangerous but necessary transition, I need to know if you are ready to see what has been hidden. The first step to breaking the programming is to declare your consciousness to the system. If you've ever felt at any point in your life that something is wrong with reality, that there's a veil covering your eyes, I want you to leave a comment now. Write the phrase, "I see the strings." By writing this, you materialize your intention to no longer be just a battery for the system. It's a small act of rebellion, but it's where it all begins. Declare, "I see the strings," because from this very moment, we will descend into the slaughterhouse, understand where most of humanity is trapped, and how to begin the impossible climb. Welcome to the slaughterhouse of the soul. Now that you've declared you see the ropes, you need to understand exactly where they're tied. Most of humanity, about 95% of the people who walk this planet, live and die, perpetually cycling through the first rungs of consciousness, never suspecting that there is anything beyond the blind repetition of their days. These lower levels are not merely mental states, they are feeding grounds, designed with industrial efficiency to maintain a constant energy supply for those forces that Jung intuited operated in the shadows of the collective unconscious. To escape the prison, you must first have the brutal courage to admit you are in it, and that requires descending to level 1, survival consciousness, the animal state that governs the modern world. At this basal stage, your reptilian brain takes complete command of biological operations. Every ounce of your attention is consumed by the immediate need to stay alive, safe, and protected. It's the constant voice whispering terrifying questions in the dead of night, wondering if you'll be able to pay the rent, what will happen if you lose your job, or how you'll survive if loneliness finds you. Your entire existence contracts into a singular point of tension, focused exclusively on avoiding pain and seeking a security that never seems to truly arrive. Time, for those trapped here, collapses. You live haunted by the ghosts of past traumas or paralyzed by the anxiety of a catastrophic future that your mind never stops projecting. You are never truly present. You are a specter haunting your own life, reacting to stimuli like a biological automaton. The emotional signature of this level is unmistakable and heavy. It's a chronic fear, a basic anxiety that never fully dissipates, interrupted only by sudden bursts of anger when the little security you have feels threatened. There's a deep sense of victimization here, the ingrained belief that life is something that happens to you, not through you. But what Jung realized and what the Gnostics already knew is that this is not an evolutionary accident. The modern economic system was specifically designed to keep survival consciousness perpetually active. Credit card debt, the cost of living that always outpaces wage growth, the planned instability of the job market. None of these are system failures. They are fundamental design features of the prison. When you are kept in this survival state, the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for higher reasoning, creativity, and long-term planning, literally shuts down. Blood flow is redirected to the amygdala, the center of fear, transforming you into a purely reactive being. You make decisions based on panic, not wisdom. You become predictable, controllable, and above all, easy to manipulate. And that low-vibration electromagnetic frequency that your body incessantly emits in this state is the Archon's main feast. You have become exactly what they needed, an organic battery pulsing with fear. But let's say you manage to climb a little. You achieve some financial stability, a decent job, a comfortable place to live. You believe you've escaped, but in reality, you've only changed cells. You enter level 2, ego consciousness, the prison of identity. And this is where the game becomes truly insidious, because this level has the sweet taste of progress. The trap here is sophisticated. Your entire sense of self-worth becomes anchored in external validation. You merge with what Jung called the persona, the social mask, completely forgetting who is behind it. You become your job title, the number of followers on social media, the car you drive, the clothes you wear, and the status of your relationships. At this stage, your worth is determined solely by comparison to others. You scroll through your phone and feel that sharp pang of envy, questioning why the other person's life seems so much brighter than yours. You get promoted and, for a moment, feel superior to your colleagues. A temporary dopamine rush the system gives you as a reward for good behavior. You buy luxury brands not because you love the quality, but because you desperately need others to see you wearing them. It's a constant performance, an endless audition for an audience too busy performing their own pieces to really notice you. The emotional signature here shifts from fear to pride, shame, judgment, and a subtle but corrosive anxiety that you're never enough. Consumer culture is engineered to keep you trapped at exactly this level. Advertising doesn't sell products, it sells inadequacy. It creates a hole in your soul and then offers a commodity as the only possible filling. You are always becoming, never being, always acquiring, never arriving. Corporate culture amplifies this infinitely, encouraging you to climb the ladder, to compete, to accumulate more to prove you're worth the space you occupy. It's a hamster wheel disguised as a stairway to heaven, and the trap within the trap is that level 2 feels so much better than level 1. You're no longer fighting for physical survival, you're winning at life. But the Archons love level 2 because you feel free while remaining perfectly docile. You continue to feed the system, but now through pride and vanity instead of pure fear. The most dangerous aspect of this level, something Jung warned severely about, is the psychic inflation that occurs when spirituality is captured by the ego. Many sincere seekers get stuck here, turning awakening into just another status game. They believe they are awakened, while others are sheep. They pride themselves on having read the right books or followed the fashionable masters. This is not transcendence. It is the ego donning a spiritual costume. The jailer laughs, for the prisoner now decorates his cell with sacred symbols, believing that the decoration is freedom. It is merely a prettier cage, where arrogance replaces the iron bars. But even if you realize the futility of the individual ego, the system has a third layer of containment ready to receive you. You can transcend the small I only to fall into the trap of the collective we. This is level 3, social consciousness, the trap of the tribe. Here, you no longer live only for yourself, which seems noble and evolved. You find meaning through group identity, your political party, your religion, your nation, your social cause. Jung knew that identification with the masses is one of the most dangerous states for the psyche, because the individual surrenders their moral responsibility to the collective. At this level, you divide the world into binary and just categories, us versus them, good versus evil, the enlightened versus the ignorant. Your group holds the absolute truth, and their group is the embodiment of danger. You feel the energy of the crusade, the moral righteousness of fighting the good fight. The emotional signature is righteous anger, moral superiority, and the comforting feeling of tribal belonging. And it is here that the Archons reap their most abundant harvest through conflict. All great wars, political divisions that tear families apart, religious battles and cultural wars happen at this level. The system convinces you that fighting for your group is the pinnacle of conscious evolution. While you're busy battling external enemies, you never turn inward to question the programming that makes you fight. Each side believes it is the hero of the story, and this energy of conflict, this constant friction between polarities, is incredibly nourishing for the entities that operate in the shadows. Social activism often operates here. You fight corruption, racism, or greed, all valid causes, but as long as the focus is exclusively external, the internal prison remains intact. You are merely rearranging the furniture within the cell while shouting that you are free. Level 3 keeps humanity permanently divided and conquered, right against left, believer against atheist, one ideology against another. While we fight amongst ourselves, we don't look up to see who's holding the puppet strings. This level offers enough awareness to see the world's problems, but not enough to transcend them. You become an exhausted warrior, burning your vitality fighting shadows projected onto the cave wall, while the true source of the projection remains hidden. 99% of humanity spends their entire lives cycling between these three states, waking in fear of survival, spending their days comparing their egos, and seeking meaning in tribal warfare. It's the perfect farm, where you are productive, distracted, and devoured, all at the same time. But there's a crack in the wall, a narrow, almost invisible door between levels 3 and 4, and once you find it, the game changes forever. The transition from level 3 to level 4 is not merely a change of mind. It's a violation of the laws of social physics that govern this prison. It's the moment when you, like Neo, choose the red pill, not in a movie, but in the silent brutality of your kitchen or the Tuesday traffic jam. Suddenly something shifts tectonically within your psyche. You're feeling anger or anxiety, and then, like a flash of lightning in the dark, a question arises that doesn't belong in the programming. Who is perceiving this anger? In that millisecond, reality cracks. There is the anger, and there is you observing the anger. They are no longer the same thing. Jung would call this the beginning of the individuation process, the moment when the ego begins to separate itself from the autonomous complexes that possessed it. This is the birth of metacognition, level 4, self-observation awareness. For the first time, you are not merged with the contents of your mind. You realize, with an electric shock, that you are not your thoughts, not your emotions, not your traumatic history. If you can observe the thought, then you are not the thought. You are the consciousness that witnesses it. This simple realization is the most dangerous weapon a human being can wield against the Archons, for it begins to dissolve the glue that holds the illusion together. You begin to see your own programming as lines of green code descending on a black screen. You notice the limiting beliefs your parents instilled in you, not as absolute truths, but as corrupted files from an old operating system. Money is hard to come by. Life is a struggle. Vastu. You see these phrases not as reality, but as scripts running on a loop. You perceive media manipulation not as information, but as technological sorcery designed to keep your vibration low. Democracy reveals itself as theater, corporations as extraction machines. The veil becomes thin, almost transparent. But, and here lies the secret few dare to tell, this is also the moment of greatest danger. The system possesses immune defense mechanisms, and when one unit, you, begins to awaken, it attacks to reabsorb it. Gnostic texts and depth psychology agree. When you withdraw your energy from the system tries to violently pull it back. This is what mystics have called the dark night of the soul. It's not a poetic metaphor. It's a real, tangible, and terrifying crisis. The archontic universe throws everything it has against you. Financial crises arise out of nowhere to force you back into the level 1 survival fear. Years-long relationships crumble for no apparent reason. Close people, still plugged into the matrix, begin to create irrational dramas, acting as unconscious agent Smiths, trying to provoke in you the old emotional reactions that feed the jailers. Loneliness at this stage is devastating. You try to talk to old friends about what you're seeing, about the strings and the gears, and they look at you with a mixture of pity and fear as if you've lost your mind. And in a way, you have. You've lost the artificial reason that kept you asleep. You're in liminal space between worlds, no longer a caterpillar, but not yet a butterfly. You're just a dissolving biological soup inside a dark cocoon. The isolation is intentional. It's a weapon of social pressure. We are biologically programmed to fear exclusion from the tribe, because in the ancestral past, this meant death. The system uses this instinct against you, screaming in your ears, "Go back, conform, it's not worth being free if you're alone." And here I need you to look inside yourself now, with brutal honesty. That feeling of isolation, that nobody around you speaks your language, that you're watching a play where everyone is following a script you tore up. Are you feeling that right now? That disconnection from the old world is the classic symptom of the matrix breaking down. I want to know if I'm talking to the right people here. If you are going through or have already gone through this desert of inexplicable loneliness where old friends seem like strangers, leave just one word in the comments: desert. By writing this, you signal to others who are reading that they are not crazy, that this loneliness is, in fact, a sign of progress. If you can stabilize at level 4, if you have the titanic strength to endure the dissolution of your old identity without running back to the anesthetized comfort of unconsciousness, you prepare yourself for the most crucial transition of all. The desert crossing leads to the forbidden oasis. You are ready for level 5, the state of consciousness that the Nag Hammadi texts suggest is the Archon's ultimate nightmare. It is here that you cease to be prey and become something the system cannot even see. We have now arrived at the territory where freedom ceases to be an abstract concept and becomes a physical, visceral, and undeniable experience. Level 5. Witness consciousness. This is where you become genuinely ungovernable, an anomaly in the system that the Matrix Code cannot process. Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist who survived the hell of Auschwitz, discovered this level in the most terrible circumstances a human being can endure, where death was the only certainty. He left us the master key in a phrase that echoes through the decades. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space lies our power to choose the response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. This space, this infinitesimal gap that most ignore, is level 5. It is the inner sanctuary that the Archons cannot invade, the sacred land where their authority crumbles to dust. The secret that was kept in the clay jars of Nag Hammadi, and that Jung whispered in his studies of alchemy, is that at this level, you become invisible to archontic manipulation. But how does this invisibility work in practice? It's not magic, it's quantum physics applied to consciousness. These parasitic entities don't have physical eyes. They track their prey through signatures of emotional heat. They feed on unconscious and automatic reactions. They desperately need you to be a mirror that immediately reflects the pain, fear, and anger they project. They need you to identify with the drama to say, "I am angry," instead of, "I perceive the anger." But at level 5, you break the mirror. Anger arises, yes, like a sudden storm. Fear knocks at the door, yes, with its old logical arguments, but you feel them fully in your body without becoming them. You observe the emotional storm as one observes rain falling through a thick glass window. You see the flood, you hear the thunder, but you don't get wet. Imagine the titanic power this gives you in everyday life. Someone insults you in traffic or in a meeting, expecting your usual outburst, the one that generates the red energy of anger that the system loves to dine on. The Matrix script expects reaction A to trigger consequence B. But instead of exploding, you observe the sensation of heat rising in your chest, observe the thought of retaliation arising, and simply don't take the bait. You remain centered, anchored in a depth that the insult cannot touch. The energy vampire starves in front of you. The script fails. The loop is broken. You participate in the world, go to work, pay bills, love and lose. But there is an underlying stillness, an oceanic silence that the surface waves cannot disturb. You are in the world, but as the Gnostics and Jung said, you are no longer of this world. You are the space where the world happens. When you reach this stability, reality begins to respond to you in a radically different way. It's as if the Matrix realizes you've awakened and, unable to drain you, stops trying to fight you, beginning to cooperate in strange ways. Synchronicities, those improbable events that Jung studied so thoroughly and that materialistic science dismisses as coincidence, begin to multiply exponentially. The book you needed falls off the shelf. The right person calls at the exact moment. The necessary money appears from unexpected sources. It's not the law of attraction in the vulgar sense. It's harmonic resonance. You stopped emitting the frequency of static, fear, and lack, so the universe stopped reflecting chaos back to you. You developed immunity to the virus of fear. You see the attempted manipulation in the news, coldly understand what they want you to feel, and calmly refuse the invitation to the banquet of misery. However, make no mistake, the system will not give up without a final test. Level 5 is where the great test takes place, to confirm whether you have truly stabilized in witness consciousness or if it is merely a passing phase of ego inflation. Greater challenges will come, tailor-made for your deepest triggers. Profound betrayals from those you trusted most, sudden financial losses that defy logic, health crises that arise out of nowhere. But as you face these storms, you will notice something extraordinary, almost alien. You don't break. You feel the physical or emotional pain, but you don't add unnecessary psychological suffering, the poor me narrative. You understand that pain is inevitable on this dense plane, but suffering is a choice made by the ego that wants to be the victim of the story. You respond with strategic wisdom, not with blind reactivity, and prepare for the social side effect. The people around you, still plugged into archontic feeding, may instinctively amplify the drama. Your calmness disturbs them. Your silence sounds like a judgment to their inner chaos. They will desperately try to pull you back to their frequency, to the emotional maya where they feel comfortable and validated. They will scream, accuse, cry, all to see you lose control, just to confirm that you are still the same as them. But you remain on solid ground, reaching out with compassion, yet firmness, without letting yourself be pulled into the hole. You become a pillar of order in the midst of entropic chaos. This level is where most serious spiritual practitioners, monks, and Stoic philosophers aspire to reach. It is the sovereignty of the reclaimed soul. You are a beneficial virus that has become immune to the diseased host, rewriting the code around you simply by your presence. But as liberating as this sounds, there is more. The ladder does not end with immunity. Level 5 is freedom from prison, but level 6 and 7 are the terrifying and magnificent discovery that you are, and always have been, the owner of the land where the prison was built. We are about to enter the annihilation zone of the separate self, the place where human consciousness touches the very source of reality and where duality dissolves. Prepare yourself, because what comes next dissolves the last illusion, the illusion that you exist separate from the whole. If level 5 is freedom from prison, what comes next is the dissolution of the very idea that you needed to be freed. We now prepare to enter sacred and dangerous territory, a frequency zone that the archontic structure not only fears, but is incapable of processing. We are talking about level 6, unity consciousness. Here, the final wall of the matrix, the illusion of separateness, begins to crumble. At the previous level, you witnessed your life without attachment. Now, the witness expands to include all that exists. The boundaries you have spent your entire life defending, where I end and you begin, reveal themselves as persistent mirages, smoke projected to keep the game of division operative. This is not some abstract salon philosophy. It is a direct and devastating experience. Jung touched upon this mystery when he formulated the concept of one world, the unique world where matter and psyche are aspects of the same underlying reality. At level 6, you don't understand this intellectually, you feel it in your very bones. The sensation of being an isolated self, encapsulated within a bag of skin, gazing out at a strange and hostile universe, evaporates. You realize with a clarity that brings tears to your eyes that there is only one consciousness experiencing itself through billions of different eyes. The person you love, the person you hate, the stranger on the street, all are literally you, living different trajectories on the great wheel of time. For the control system, this perception is the fatal virus. The entire archontic architecture is built on the fundamental basis of separation. Us against them, good against evil, winner against loser. The demiurge reigns by dividing. But how can you compete if the other is you? How can you fear loss if nothing is truly lost, only transformed? At level 6, the binary code of the matrix fails. The separation.exe file is permanently deleted. The compassion that arises here is not a moral commandment imposed by any religion. It is a logical and inevitable consequence of clear vision. Harming the other becomes as absurd as intentionally taking a hammer and smashing your own finger. This perception alters the very physics of your interactions. When you reject polarity, when you offer no resistance to the attack but envelop it in understanding, the aggressor's energy finds nowhere to latch onto and returns to its source or dissipates. You become a black hole for the system's negativity, absorbing and transmuting what would previously have fueled the conflict. And here lies the power that alters physical reality. When you operate from unity, matter becomes malleable. Quantum physics has already shown us that the observer affects the observed, but at level 6 you discover that the observer and the observed. You stop trying to manifest things, a common trap of the spiritual ego that still wants to control the scene, and begin to reveal what already exists in the infinite field of possibilities. Reality ceases to be something fixed and objective, becoming a collaborative dream where you have awakened. Great avatars of history, whose teachings have been systematically distorted by institutions, spoke of this state. When it was said, I and the Father are one. It was not a declaration of exclusive divinity, but an invitation for all to perceive the same fusion. But there is one last step, a level that human language structured on the duality of subject and object fails to describe. Level 7, Source Consciousness, the return home. The Gnostics called this gnosis, the direct and unmediated knowledge of the divine. Buddhists call it nirvana, Hindus moksha. Jung called it the full realization of the self, the archetype of totality that contains light and shadow but transcends both. It is the total annihilation of the small self and the plunge into the ocean. Here, time collapses. Past, present, and future exist simultaneously in an eternal now. You recognize with a cosmic laugh that you have been the player, the board, and the pieces all along. There is no more search, for there is no one to search and nothing to be found that is not already the very substance of the seeker. The ultimate secret, the one they burned libraries to hide, is this: you never ceased to be the source. The fall was not an accident or a punishment. It was a voluntary choice of forgetfulness to experience the joy of rediscovery. The Archons in this supreme vision cease to be monsters and reveal themselves as the necessary resistance, the weights in the cosmic gymnasium that allowed your consciousness to develop muscles. Without darkness, light would have no contrast. From the peak of level 7, you see that everything is perfect, including suffering, including imprisonment. Everything was a dance of consciousness with itself. You understand that the matrix is not a mistake but a harsh school. And graduation is not escaping it, but mastering it, transforming the lead of unconscious experience into the gold of awakened consciousness, exactly as the alchemists promised. Stabilizing here while maintaining a human body is rare, reserved for a few in each generation. But even a momentary glimpse of this state alters your molecular structure forever. You cannot unsee the truth. And when you bring this frequency back into the everyday world, you become a channel for pure transformation. The Archons can't even register your presence. It's like a movie character trying to interact with the projector light. The question ceases to make sense. Now, I need to pause and ask something directly to your soul, something you may have felt in moments of profound silence in nature or while looking into someone's eyes. Have you ever had, even for a second, the distinct feeling that the separation between you and the world was an illusion, that you were part of everything? If you've ever felt that cosmic click, leave the phrase "we are one" in the comments. By writing this, you anchor this truth in the material world and help break the collective hypnosis of separation. However, knowing that these levels exist is only the map, and a map is not the territory. The Archons dominated humanity for millennia, not only by hiding the truth, but by hiding theos. They destroyed the mystery schools that taught the practical techniques of ascension. Until now. Because in the next step, I'm not going to give you any more theory. I'm going to give you the tools. I'm going to give you the practical, step-by-step manual on how to start climbing that ladder today in your real life, with your bills and problems. The theory is over. The practice of freedom begins now. We've reached the point of convergence. Everything we've discussed so far has been the mapping of the prison and the glimpse of freedom. But knowing the door is unlocked isn't the same as walking through it. The Archons count on your inertia. They bet you'll be fascinated by the information, feel a momentary thrill, and then fall back into the hypnotic sleep of routine. We're going to prove them wrong. The ancient Gnostics didn't just theorize, they practiced. And to climb the 7 levels, you need daily weapons to combat the gravity of the system. Here are the practices they tried to erase from history, adapted to the reality of the modern world. The first tool is the consciousness audit. You can't change what you don't perceive. For the next 7 days, carry a small notebook or use your phone. Every few hours, stop and brutally ask yourself, what level am I operating at right now? If you're anxious about the future, mark level 1. If you're comparing yourself on Instagram, level 2. If you're feeling political anger, level 3. Don't judge. The goal isn't to be perfect, it's to be conscious. Simple observation begins to activate level 4. Jung said that bringing the unconscious into the light is the only way to not be governed by fate. But beware, your ego will try to sabotage this. It will say it's silly that you forgot, or try to justify your low level as necessary. Ignore the sabotaging voice, just write it down. Persistence in observation is what breaks the spell. The second practice is cutting the feeding tubes. Identify your triggers. What makes you spiral into fear or anger? The news? Certain social media accounts? A specific relative? These are your drain points. Do a radical detox. Try 30 days without news. It's not alienation, it's sanitary protection for your psyche. You will notice that the mental fog dissipates, baseline anxiety drops, and your vital energy returns. You are shutting off the tap from which they drink. Prepare for withdrawal. Your mind, addicted to the chemistry of fear and indignation, will crave a dose of drama. It will create boredom, restlessness, sustain the emptiness. It is in this emptiness that the new consciousness takes root. The third is the space technique, the gap. Practice inserting conscious pauses into your day. Before responding to a difficult message, stop for 10 seconds. Before eating, stop. Between getting into the car and starting the engine, stop. In this microspace of silence, you break the automaticity. You insert level 5 into the routine. It is in this interval that free will is reborn. Meditation doesn't need to be an hour on a mountaintop. 5 minutes observing your breath, noticing that you are not the thinker but the observer of thought, is worth more than years of theoretical study. Your thoughts will continue to come. Don't fight them. Just observe them like clouds passing in the sky of your mind, without clinging to any of them. The fourth tool is emotional alchemy. When dense emotion arises, and it will, for the system counterattacks, do not repress it, but neither do you merge with it. Feel it in your body. Say, anger is present, and not, I am angry. Feel the texture, the temperature of the emotion without creating a mental story about it. Without the narrative of, he did this to me. The emotion is simply energy in motion. It passes. And as it passes without its usual reaction, the Archon starves. You transform the lead of fear into the gold of presence. This is the true philosopher's stone that the alchemists sought, the ability to transmute inner states through the light of consciousness. And finally, practice anonymous service to reach level 6. Do something good for someone without anyone knowing. Without expecting recognition, without posting, without telling. This dissolves the ego and proves to your own mind that separation is an illusion. Helping others is helping yourself. The system cannot process silent altruism. It's an indigestible frequency for it. Remember, awakening is not a linear event, it's a spiral. You will touch the sky and fall into the mud the next day. That's normal. The caterpillar doesn't become a butterfly without the cocoon violently breaking open. You are rewriting millions of years of biological programming and millennia of social conditioning. Have relentless patience with yourself. What matters is the direction, not the speed. Every time you choose awareness over habit, every time you choose love over fear, the structure of the matrix weakens. You may feel you are regressing, but the mere awareness of regression is already progress. The sleeper doesn't know they are asleep. Only those who are waking up perceive sleep. You are the one you've been waiting for. No one will come to save you. There will be no spaceships landing, no political messiahs, no magical gurus. This idea of external salvation is the last bar of the prison. The divine spark, the pneuma, the totality of the self that Jung described is already there, buried under layers of mental debris. You are not becoming something new. You are removing what is not you. The door was never locked. The key was always in your hand. Responsibility is terrifying for the ego, but liberating for the spirit. To assume that you are the creator of your experience is the ultimate act of rebellion. Now, the choice is yours. Not tomorrow, not someday, but now, this very second, as my voice reaches your consciousness. Will you go back to autopilot, scrolling to the next cheap dopamine video? Or will you stop, breathe, and reclaim your sovereignty? The game ends when you decide it's over. If this knowledge resonated with the frequency of your forgotten truth, if you felt the call to climb these 7 steps, do something concrete now. Like this video so the algorithm is forced to deliver this key to other trapped minds. Subscribe to the channel to continue receiving escape maps. And most importantly, start today, you won. Now go live like someone who knows the secret.